Welcome to Learning Lab, where we talk about the science of learning. Today, I'm super excited to welcome Emily Timm, a PhD candidate at Rush University Medical College, whose graduate research focuses on brain function in patients with rare neurodegenerative movement disorders. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, Aneesh. Good to see you. Thanks for
Good to
having
see you
me.
as well. So, for our audience, can you explain a little bit more about what your research focuses on?
Absolutely. Yeah. I study rare neurodegenerative movement disorders. Our lab primarily focuses on kind of brain activation. So we're interested in how people with these disorders, how their brain functions differently from healthy people of a similar age group. So we use different functional and structural imaging techniques like MRIs to kind of understand those differences. Particularly, we're interested in cognitive changes. So we look particularly in patients that have working memory impairments, as well as it's a movement disorder. So they have issues with balance and walking as well, but kind of a mixture of the two. So, yeah.
So, based on what you've studied about neurodegenerative disorders and memory loss, what can healthy individuals learn about memory retention and forgetting?
First, I would just note that forgetting information is a normal and healthy part of brain function. So, quote unquote, normal forgetting would include forgetting names or words occasionally, temporarily misplacing items like keys, or forgetting why you entered a room. These things occur because the brain is constantly clearing out information it deems less important in order to retain the most relevant information for long-term storage. Forgetting can be more concerning when it becomes severe enough to interfere with daily function. So I work with patients with neurodegenerative disorders, including Parkinson's disease and Huntington's disease, and they experience difficulty remembering recent events, often forget common words, take longer to complete familiar tasks, and experience, personality and mood changes. So these changes are more troubling and would probably warrant a conversation with your doctor. But
Like,
there's also such thing as normal forgetting, so it's not always a problem.
I feel like I always forget, not always, but constantly I'm forgetting what I'm doing when I walk into a new room. So, good to know it's normal
Don't
for
be
that to
worried. Yes.
happen. So, what does the research on neurodegenerative disorders teach us about the importance of repetition and association when learning new material?
Mm. Repetition and association are both extremely important for learning and memory. There's this concept of neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to adapt or reorganize itself through forming new neural connections. So essentially, connections that are used more often are strengthened, while those that are not used as often can become weaker. You can kind of think of it as a use it or lose it kind of situation. So, therefore, it's easy to kind of see how repetition aids in reinforcing the neural connections associated with learning new material. So, similarly, associating new information with existing knowledge can cause one to remember new information better and retain it for longer periods of time. In neurodegenerative disorders, damage occurs to regions of the brain that are involved in learning and memory, but implementing aids like repetition and mnemonic devices can create associations to help trigger the recall of information, like putting names to faces.
Do you have examples of associations that someone could try when they're trying to remember something?
So, for instance, like if you forgot where you placed your keys last, you could just kind of retrace your steps. So, think back to where you were when you last used your keys. Was it when you entered your apartment? Did you put it on a hook? Do you have a place where you usually keep them? Or, might they be in your purse? Something like that, kind of retracing your steps to help you remember.
Are there memory strengthening practices you think people should adopt earlier in life to maintain brain health later on? And how should people approach their memory retention as they get older?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, engaging in a healthy lifestyle kind of overall is really important for protecting your cognitive health. So factors like regular exercise, eating a healthy diet, such as following the Mediterranean or MIND diets, getting enough sleep, avoiding smoking and heavy alcohol consumption. All of those are protective against developing not only neurodegenerative disorders, but also other health conditions like cardiovascular disease, cancers, and diabetes. Additionally, mental stimulation is a great way to exercise your mind. So activities like reading, writing, doing puzzles, playing strategy games, learning a new language, or even just connecting and socializing with other people are all really great practices for maintaining your cognitive health, and they can really be done at any age.
So those are kind of like working out for the brain, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. You can think of exactly just brain exercises, brain games,
Hmm.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you think brain games like that you see on like your phone, like on the App Store, do those actually help? Do you think?
To an extent, yeah, yeah. I mean, we all probably play, the New York Times Wordle and connections and things like that.
Hmm.
I do don't think those are challenging enough that they really do have some kind of protective value. So
Hmm.
keep playing
So
them.
they kind of have to be challenging, right? You have to like challenge your brain.
Yes. So level of difficulty or like challenging a different aspect of your brain, those are both uh, kind of the main components I would focus on. So, like engaging in a new activity can
Mm.
really help with kind of that same concept of neuroplasticity. If you're learning a new hobby or a new, habit or game, that can kind of evoke new connections within the brain and strengthen different regions.
Got it. So how broadly applicable are some of these strategies? So in other words, how different is the brain and information processing from human to human?
Mhm. So, in general, the neural processes of encoding, storing, and retrieving information are basically the same across individuals. There is variability in terms of the efficiency of those processes, though. So, some people will naturally have exceptional memories, while others may need to utilize more cognitive cues or strategies to improve memory. So, just in general, I would recommend trying different strategies until you find the ones that work best for you. It's not a one
Hmm.
size fits all situation.
Right. So we're different enough where different strategies will work for different people.
Definitely. Yes.
Are there certain types of memories or modalities, like visual or auditory, that tend to retain longer than others?
Yeah, so there are three kind of main types of memories, long-term, short-term, and sensory memories. As the name kind of suggests, long-term memories tend to have the longest retention. And under that main umbrella of long-term memories, emotional memories, so events that evoke strong positive or negative emotions, such as taking a great vacation with friends or family, or experience a traumatic accident, something like that. Those along with procedural memories. So these are kind of automatic or like learned skills that become automatic, such as riding a bike or tying your shoes, things like that. Those are kind of the two forms of memories that have the greatest longevity.
Got it. Do you have an opinion on like visual versus auditory at all?
That I think can really differ person to person.
Hmm.
I personally am a very visual learner rather than auditory. I have to kind of write out my notes versus just hearing someone lecture. But I, have friends and acquaintances who are the opposite. So once again, that's kind of person to person variability, kind of work out how your brain works best.
Yeah. So that's a great transition to my next question, which is to ask a little bit about you and what works for you. Do you have any learning or memorization tactics that have worked better for you and how your brain works?
Yeah, so kind of going hand in hand with that visual aspect, I find that physically writing things down really helps me learn information the best. So whether it's, like I said, copying notes down from a course to study for an exam, or even just like writing out a grocery list or a to-do list, the act of putting pen to paper really just helps me remember things more clearly.
So when you really want to remember something, like it's for a class, is it more helpful to reread what you just wrote, or do you want to write it down again?
I would say a little bit of both, kind of the repetition of writing it over and over again, or even just speaking it. Again, that's kind of that visual versus auditory learning differences
Mhm.
going on there. Um, but what I find most important is to be able to repeat that information, put it on paper without access to notes, for instance, just to reinforce it in my memory, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, if you were to design a brain-friendly learning platform, what neuroscience principles would you build it around?
So I would absolutely suggest implementing mnemonic devices in flashcards. So as I mentioned before, repeated exposure to information is essential for retaining information and storing it in the long term. Creative mnemonic devices are kind of just a fun way to learn, honestly. I still remember the mnemonic aid that my third grade teacher taught us to learn the names and order of the planets in the solar system. Just fun things like that really have lasting longevity and retention.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. This was very informative, and I know our listeners will learn a lot from this. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this conversation, share this with someone that loves to learn or wants to improve their learning, and stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks, everyone.